Hello and welcome to the channel where we talk about all things ice shots and chill with friends. My name is Liam and today I want to share with you my Promise Hololive OCG deck. Now if you are new to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. If you enjoy what we do here, please let me know by hitting that like button. As well as that, check my other socials on Twitch, on X and on Discord. Those links are down below. But let's jump straight in. So at the moment, we've got about half of the first set of the Hololive OCG revealed at last. And at this point here, I want to start showing some deck profiles with the sort of things that I think I've been able to build so far. And if you're interested to see more of these, again, let me know in the comments below what sort of deck profile would you like to see. But today I thought I would start with the one that seems the most complete with the reveals as they are. And that is the Promise Hololive deck. And in this video I'll go through the ideas behind the build, why I've done certain ratios, and ultimately why I think this deck is going to be pretty strong. Now of course this deck list could change once we see all of the cards from set 1 after the official release, but let me know in the comments below, would you make any changes with the reveals so far? And in a few weeks time after the release of the Hololive card game, what changes would you make now that you know the full set? Let me know in the comments below. But on that note, let's get into the deck profile. Starting off with the Oshi and Cheer deck, we run the MOOMIN Oshi from set 1 with the Oshi skill to reduce damage taken once per turn by 50 by paying 2 holo power, and the SP Oshi skill to be able to search your deck for an event card. Now the first effect is super relevant because it helps you against those strong aggro decks, looking at you Kanata, and also just keeps your holo mems round just that little bit longer in order for you to potentially bloom into your first and seconds if you need to, and also to just not take life when you don't need to. The event search is also extremely useful. You can get certain cards in this deck which we'll cover later, but there have been many a time where using the SP skill has been extremely useful. And for this deck, I do think this is better than the cheer set option purely because of the damage absorption effect. In terms of the cheer deck, we run 16 white cheers and we run 4 blue cheers, and that makes the 20 card cheer deck. Moving on to the holo members, we run 4 copies of the debut collab effect MOOMIN, we run 4 copies of the first blue MOOMIN, and 3 copies of the second MOOMIN. And this really is the engine of your deck. You've got the MOOMIN debut, which allows you to draw a card when you collab with it, as long as you've got a Promise member in your center stage, which you always will. The first MOOMIN allows you to search for a debut or first holo mem from your deck, providing that you bloom it on a debut holo member, which again allows you to grab, you can loop your MOOMINs, you can go into your other holo members as well. It's a fantastic card to just get exactly what you need. And then the second MOOMIN is your damage output, at least part 1 of your damage output, whereby you can first of all on collab be able to get a search for a Promise holo mem, and the attack of the second MOOMIN is a 70+, which when you use this art, your center and your collab position holo members gain 10 power for each holo member on your backstage, so basically getting plus 40 to itself at max and also plus 40 to the accompanying holo member on the front row. The next holo talent you run is Iris. We run 3 copies of its debut from the start deck, 2 copies of its first and 2 copies of its second. This is your main power output as well as your only access to your holo power. Now there isn't any other card in the set so far that lets you search your holo power and basically grab something out that you might have buried from just collabing in general. The debut Iris allows you to search your holo power when you collab with it. Also the second does the same, but the difference is that when you collab with your Iris debut, you must put a card from your hand into your holo power. The second allows you to put the top of deck into your holo power. So the second lets you give you basically a +1. The first Iris is a fantastic power pump when you bloom with Iris. Both the center and collab holo member gain 30 power to their arts. And then the Iris itself is a 50 base attack which also does for each Promise member on your stage, this gains an additional 20 power, meaning that the maximum power that this second Iris can do without any buff is 170. Now that's a lot of damage. And the final talent we run is Crony. We run 3 copies of her debut, 3 copies of her first, and 2 copies of her second. Now, the debut itself isn't that great of a card, but we have to run it in order to run the first and the second, of course, and the first is what makes this card worthwhile in my opinion. It's got the bloom effect of when you bloom with this character, you choose one of your Promise Holomems and take the color of that holo member, search your cheer deck for a cheer of the same color, and then attach it to any of your Promise holo members. This is your cheer ramp for the deck if you need it, if you need to make sure that you know you're getting 2 or 3 holo members with suitable cheer in case of one of them being downed. And then also the second Crony is just a really nice tech card in the sense of the rewind collab effect is actually kind of nutty if you're playing against a deck that runs a lot of first and second decks, especially buzzes, whereby when you collab with this holo member, you choose one of your opponent's holo members in their backstage and you basically rewind it back to its debut stage and also remove its damage and also any attached cards. The attached cards and the unbloomed holo members return back to your opponent's hand. That's fine, but you basically mean that they could have a second Pekora with 200 hit points, and then you turn it back into its debut Peko with 90 HP. You could then combine it with cards like So Your Enemy, and then basically drag that holo member forward and get a cheeky knockout quite easily. The main art of the Crony is used occasionally. It's very, very rare you have to use this, but it is a nice option where if you play a debut on that turn, you can basically bloom it from your hand the same turn it was played, only when you use this card's art. Apart from that, it's very rare you use the art on this Crony. It is used mainly for this first Crony and also for the rewind effect as and when you need it. Moving on to the support cards, we run 4 copies of Ordinary PC to let you search for a debut holo member and play it to your backstage. We run 3 copies of the backup PC to top 5 for a limited support card. We run 4 copies of the friend mascot to go with your Moomays. It helps you reduce damage as well by detaching it, and it gives you a bit of extra damage output on your Moomays by an extra 10. And we also run 2 copies of Stone Axe. Yes, you're not running Aki Rose, so you're not going to gain the additional effects, but extra 20 damage output is always very useful. And finally, moving on to the limited supports, we run 4 copies of Anodica because draw 3 is good. We run 3 copies of Manechan because being able to refix your hand if for whatever reason you end up getting stuck with loads of first and second cards in your hand that you just can't use to try and go back into your debuts. An extremely good supporter in my opinion. We run 3 copies of So You're the Enemy because that effect of being able to just switch your opponent's center with a backstage member is extremely good, and again comboing that with the likes of Crony is really, really useful. And finally, we run 1 copy of Moomays Specific Limited, where sometimes you use the first effect. It's usually pretty rare to just be able to roll a die on 3 or lower, detach a cheer from any of your opponent's holo members. But because you're running Moomay as your Oshi, you absolutely get away with using the once per game effect, which is just remove 2 cheer from your opponent's center holo mem. This is great against, especially if they've got a second in their center stage. It can just massively slow down your opponent and basically force them to spend an extra turn or 2 regaining the cheers to be able to actually do anything with their center, or force them to baton pass in order to bring something else that can attack. This card has won me games, and you only realize it one-off because of the Moomays SP Oshi art. If you don't have it in your hand already, you just search for it whenever you need it. If it ends up in Holo Power, that's fine. Just use Iris to get it. So running this as a one-off, usually I'll say in this game from the play that I've had, I would never ever run a 1 copy of a card. This deck is the exception because you have your Holo Power search, you have your event search, and you also just, you know, might just draw it. And that's your deck. So the synergies within this deck, again, obviously ordinary PCs to make sure you see your debuts. You're only running 10 debuts in this deck. So having access to just see anyone that you want is extremely useful. Obviously draw power and hand fixing is super important with your limiteds. Board control with the So You're Your Enemy. Then obviously running the mascots in order to buff your Moomies, because the Moomies are the ones that you really want to stay around as long as possible to ensure that you get your blooms off. And then you run the backup PCs, because if for whatever reason you're really struggling for your limiteds, just using that, being able to find again your Nodikas, your Mana-chans, or again your one of Moomies is just really, really useful. And then the damage output on the Stone Axe is just a nice add. You could run other cards instead of this. You could probably run a 4th backup PC if you really wanted to. You could potentially go into more support and run pen lights. There's a few options that you could do, but I personally like the extra damage output because there are some times when you just haven't got that extra 10 or 20 damage from your arts, and Axe fixes that. Losing 10 health as a result of using it is not the end of the world. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Again, if you are new to the channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoy what we do here, please let me know by hitting that like button. And what other deck profiles would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!